Hello, and welcome for joining us this morning. It's wonderful to see so many people interested in electric vehicles. My name is Wendy Wall. I'm the president of the Vancouver Island Strata Owners Association. Today, guest speaker Lee MacFarlane and I will be talking about EV-ready plans for condominium stratas. On behalf of VISOA, I would like to take a moment to say how grateful we are to the Lekwungen, Malahat, Chinook, Tasak, and Wasanich peoples on whose traditional territories we live and work. This webinar provides information for condominium style stratas. We will be holding another webinar regarding duplexes and townhouses with dedicated parking spaces, as these rebates are structured differently. We gratefully acknowledge the financial support of the province of British Columbia through the Minister of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation. The CleanBC Go Electric Charger Program, administered by BC Hydro and FortisBC, provides rebates towards the cost of the purchase and installation of eligible EV charging equipment, support services for multi-unit residential buildings and workplaces who are seeking solutions for the EV charging needs. The information provided in today's webinar is accurate as of November 20th, 2021. When you are ready to get started, I encourage you to check the program guide for up-to-date details of the rebates, eligibility requirements, application process, and timelines. Today we'll be talking about these things. Why plan for electric vehicle charging in your stratas? What is an EV-ready plan? What are the benefits for your strata of having a plan? Of course, what's in the plan? We're going to talk about the rebates, eligibility, and how you apply. We're also going to talk about other rebates available and the EV Charging Advisor Program. So why should stratas plan for EV charging? The demand for electric vehicle charging is growing in strata corporations. The Zero Emission Vehicles Act legislates that 10% of all light-duty vehicle sales must be zero-emission vehicles by 2025. That increases to 30% by 2030 and 100% by 2040. Rebates are currently available to assist stratas. Also, the 2020 mandate to the minister responsible for housing includes a directive to bring in right-to-charge legislation that will enable installation of electric vehicle charging infrastructure in more strata and apartment buildings. So what does this mean? The legislation could require stratas to provide EV charging. So start thinking about future-proofing your stratas while these rebates are available. So the first question, what is EV ready? It means that the parking space has an energized outlet with a cover that provides a final connection point and an electrical wiring installation for a level 2 electric vehicle supply equipment. It's a technical term, but that's commonly called a charging station. So here on the left is a photo of what we call an energized outlet with a cover. On the right-hand side, we can see a charging station has now been installed, connected to the outlet. And you can see that the charging station has a long cord. If you aren't familiar with electric vehicles, the photo on the left in this slide shows a standard level 2 charging head that is attached to the charging station with a cord. Beside it is a photo where it connects on the vehicle itself. It's not that different than filling up at a gas station. To illustrate the difference between level 1 and level 2 charging equipment, the photo on the right shows that a level 1 charger is a cord that simply plugs into an electrical outlet. So what is an EV-ready plan? It's a plan that will help your strata make wise choices for electric vehicle charging systems. In this webinar, when we use the term EV-ready plan, we are referring to a plan that meets the requirements of the CleanBC rebate program. There is nothing stopping you from getting a feasibility study or report done on your own. But if you want to be eligible for a rebate under this program, there are specific requirements. An EV-ready plan is a professional document. The rebate program requires it to include details of how your strata will provide each residential unit with at least one EV-ready parking space. For example, imagine that some residential units are assigned more than one parking space. If you have 30 residential units that use a total of 40 parking spaces, to be eligible for a rebate, your EV-ready plan must provide a solution that makes at least 30 of the residential use parking spaces EV-ready. You could make all 40 spaces EV-ready, but 30 is the minimum. Any residential units that do not have parking spaces are exempt. There's no requirement to make stalls EV-ready for commercial units, and the EV-ready plan is for residential use only. For example, if you're in a mixed-use strata, imagine that you have 45 residential condo units, but only 20 have parking spaces. The developer in this case sold other units with no parking spaces. There are 10 commercial parking spaces and 5 for visitors. To be eligible for a rebate in this situation, your EV-ready plan must have a solution that makes all of the 20 residential use spaces EV-ready. The person preparing your plan might have a few different solutions for how your strata can achieve this. But if you want a rebate towards the cost of the plan must present only one solution. It's the strata's preferred option only. So who can prepare your plan? If you want to get a rebate towards the cost of the plan, the CleanBC Go Electric EV Charger program says that the plan can be created by a licensed electrical contractor and/or a registered professional electrical engineer. For smaller buildings with relatively straightforward electrical designs, you might find that your plan can be prepared by an electrical contractor. For larger buildings or more complex situations, you may want to engage an electrical engineer. Also, you may want to have both of them involved in creating your plan. There are many benefits of having an EV plan. It informs owners and councils of what will work in their unique set of circumstances. It informs of electrical and other limitations in your building. It can explain complex systems. So in other words, you don't have to try to understand how these systems work. One of the benefits of a plan is that a professional will explain it to you. There are a lot of different charging stations and systems out there, and it's hard for the average person to know which will work in their particular strata. Individual owners will try to research it on their own. Well-meaning council members will as well. But stratas are not a one-size-fits-all. Every strata is different. One benefit of an EV-ready plan is that a professional has considered the information and demystified it for you. This is your EV-ready plan based on your unique set of factors. It will inform your owners and your council about what systems will work in your particular circumstances. It is much, much easier to understand a complex system when it's explained in the context of your own building. Because the plan is to make the stalls EV-ready only, it does not have to recommend specific charging stations. However, you could ask the person preparing the plan to include that information if you want it. The EV-ready plan also gives you a budget and information you need, such as eligibility for the rebates. Later, if there's interested in implementing the plan, you will need to hold an annual general meeting or special general meeting to get approval from the owners. Your EV-ready plan has information you need to help the strata prepare the resolutions to be voted on. The information will also help owners understand the project and help them make informed choices. You know the old saying, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. An EV-ready plan helps you plan for future needs. This is often called future proofing. You may only have one EV driver in your complex right now, but 3 months from now, you might have 10. If you take a proactive approach, you'll be ready for the growing demand and avoid duplication of work. If you take a reactive approach, you may find yourself wasting time and money adding infrastructure in a piecemeal fashion. If your strata decides not to implement the full EV-ready plan, you will still have a lot of useful information. If the owners later decide not to take advantage of all the rebates and decide to do charging infrastructure in phases, the plan could help keep the project on track, even if owners and council members change. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Lee MacFarlane. Lee is a certified installer through the Electric Vehicle Installer Training Program, also known as EVITP. And with his team at Edwards Electric, Lee has been a trailblazer in the installation of electrical infrastructure and EV charging systems for BC Stratas. VISOA has worked with Lee over the last few years to help his team guide strata councils through the often complex steps needed to make decisions, obtain rebates, and complete their projects. Lee has 30 years of experience in the electrical industry and is currently managing the largest EV infrastructure project, retrofit project on Vancouver Island.
Thank you, Wendy, and good morning, everyone. So what's in the plan? The essential parts of the plan could be processed down to just 2 pages, but informative constructive plans could be 40 pages. As Wendy previously said, an EV-ready plan is not to impart the needed items, but also to educate yourself and your strata members as to why you're narrowing your focus to only one choice and to help you understand these details. This process is fluid and constantly changing, so your engineer or electrical contractor are the professionals to you hire to provide this information in a clear way that is satisfactory to you as well as BC Hydro. So the basic information is your strata address, contact information, the quantity of the parking stalls that are linked to your number of suites in your property at a minimum. And there are some nuances like Wendy has mentioned in that if you do not have that amount. And the types of parking stalls, they could be limited, common, or a different type of parking stall that has some nuances. And contractor or engineer's information needs to be part of the plan with the declaration from these planners that state we understand and have met the EV Ready Plan requirements. So BC Hydro engineers, contractors, and your strata all need to understand, is there enough electrical and physical capacity on your existing system? So you require to see what your current system has, what is your main electrical service size, and what is the existing peak demand of your service. And this is one of the first stepping points that is free to attain most of the time, and we'll talk about on the next slide. And what is your spare capacity after you receive this information, and how was this information determined? There is a few ways to determine peak demand, but the most common is BC Hydro 12-month load report. This could be added with allowances depending upon temperature, building composition, and engineers' prerogatives. So your building was engineered so your electrical system at the time was just capable of taking care of your electrical needs in your building. But in reality, you will most likely use far less than it was designed for. So why is this report important? According to Rule 8106, Subrule 8 in the Canadian Electrical Code, and I'm paraphrasing, where additional loads, which are your EV chargers, are to be added to an existing service, they are permitted to be added to the maximum demand load of the existing installation as measured over the most recent 12-month period. So using a 12-month peak load report of your usage can be used as a baseline for adding more loads in the future and provide this allowance for future plans, potentially for heat pumps as well. This information can be attained by your strata or a person authorized by the strata. This is just a graphical representation of your peak load report. Most buildings we've seen have their peak usage in the winter months when you have the cold times. Heat is usually the most used energy in a building, but we've found in some buildings that have robust air conditioning systems, such as in June 29th of 2021, there we had a heat wave. That might be your peak power usage in your building, but this is all good information that we require. So under electrical capacity assessment, we look under the potential load that we might have to add for your service, for your EVSEs. Now, this skips ahead to the fact that there's great amount of consultation involved to get to this first point. What type of system will you install? Is it load managed, networked? How do we reach these conclusions? We will review in the next few pages and reach a conclusion, the best case system for your Stratus needs. Does your building have physical capacity as well? Does your service equipment have the ability to install a new breaker or switch? Is there wall space for a new panel for your EV charging needs? Minimum charging performance is a conglomerate of different variables, and charging performance assessment is an analysis of the required power in order to achieve reasonable driving range when all parking spaces are used by an EV. Your strata wants the ability to charge a reasonable amount overnight so that they will not have range anxiety. So BC Hydro lays out specific variables that need to be taken into account when it comes to this charging performance. Without performance guidelines, electrical designs may include excessive load sharing, resulting in insufficient power to provide an adequate rate of charge. Or conversely, your building design may adopt a system that dedicates too much power to each owner, which may be very costly to build. The assessment must explain how charging performance was determined. It must consider at minimum the following factors: a distance traveled by your strata vehicles. So a strata that resides in Souk may need more power per stall than a strata in Victoria. Climate is important. A strata that resides in Saanich would require a different power than in Edmonton. For hillier landscapes, if you lived on Bear Mountain, your planner may design it differently than if you're in central Saanich. Demographics are important. Retirees do not drive as much, whereas young families may have to drive to work, school, soccer games. What are your residents' purchasing plans in regards to vehicles? Do you have an exterior parking system with potentially more truck drivers? All this information amalgamates to then giving us the rate of charge that each owner should expect to attain for their own EV. So BC Hydro, in their guide, provides a table for us to utilize. And the distance in the top row is a combined average of all your owners. But in a survey, we may find that there are some outliers. This may show us that your facility may have the capacity to have owners who travel more. So these are the nuances that your planner may look at. An average breaker for a level 2 charger may be 40 amps. So, but there may be units capable of much more power to make the wiring in your building more efficient. And the second column of 9,125 may rarely be used because the row on the 40 amp with 10 sharing one circuit may be a very low expectation of power. And again, these are guidelines, but common sense and variables that we have discussed come into the play of your planner's assessment. So a survey can be a good communication tool to engage residents and understand the demographics and your own future EV buying plans. So councils should release only the aggregate data, of course, and follow Personal Information Protection Act by keeping the individual responses private. Ultimately, the author of the plan will make their own assessment about the amount of power that the building will need based on their expertise and experience and consultation with your strata. So then we come to your recommended solution. And to receive the rebate for your plan, as Wendy said, the plan must propose one solution and cost. So the plan may include a main service upgrade. And this could not just be to upgrade your service to a higher level, but may also provide an ability to add room with a new system that can sustain a new breaker or switch that's required for your EV charging system. It would include the new panel, potentially, breakers needed, a BC hydrometer that monitors this EV system. And it will also include a communication system, potentially, such as a wireless access point system. So what does communication system mean? Most of the time, planner plans to install level 2 networked chargers. These network chargers require a communication system to communicate to each other, as well as potentially outside of your property to a vendor using a cellular system or a internet system that is in your electrical room. This is required so that they can monitor for energy usage and to help provide a billing system that can manage the power used by your strata owners. The EMS, which is an energy management system, can be a server based in your electrical room, or it could be integrated into the EVSEs themselves, which are connected together by this network so that they can adjust power as needed. For example, if you had 4 network chargers that are on one circuit and you yourself are using that power on your stall to charge your electric vehicle, and your neighbor starts charging their vehicle, the EVSEs would discuss amongst themselves quickly and start sharing that power. So the recommended solution may or may not also include the EVSEs that are recommended for the installation. And this is because the EV Ready plan is to make the stalls EV ready only. It doesn't necessarily dictate what needs to be installed at the end for the charging equipment itself. But your planner may narrow your focus due to design needs that certain EVSEs require, or features that some EVSEs have over others that are required to be understood in the infrastructure stage. You can ask your contractor or engineer to propose multiple scenarios, of course, and a comparison can help owners make decisions now that account for future needs. And comparisons help owners understand the logic and cost savings of making so many stalls EV ready now. Are level 2 network chargers required? Does your strata need the ability to have a vendor monitor for power usage? Do you have a current EMS system in your building that you may want the EVSEs connected to? Does your strata want to manage the separation of costs themselves? And even though level 1 is not covered by the infrastructure rebate that follows the EV Ready plan, how does this cost compare? There may be additional cost for this assessment, and the plan submitted for the rebate must present the strata's preferred option only, of course. So now we get to the preferred solution and the budget according to that. So the budget may include the coordination the cost coordination with BC Hydro and Technical Safety BC or other jurisdiction in your area. It could include engineering design, the electrical permit for all the work. Of course, the bulk of the cost is the materials and labor to install the conduit, wiring, fittings, etc., and the communications system. If it applies, it may include also signage and painting, scanning of coring and concrete walls, trenching through open parking lots, if you have exterior parking stalls, as well as asphalt repairs. And as I said, it includes the distribution system budget, so your main switch to potentially a meter base, to then a panel system, the breakers, and as we said, the communication system itself, which is may or may not be utilized. Legal services are important to note that they are covered under the infrastructure rebate, and it may or may not, as we said, include EVSEs depending upon the design. The preferred solution budget does not include taxes, and it also doesn't include the cost of the annual operating permit from your Technical Safety BC or your local jurisdiction. So this particular annual operating permit is an overlooked item that is required by the inspection authorities. It comes at a yearly cost with the authority and possibly yearly cost by your electrical contractor that is assigned to this permit. But this permit does allow you to use a networked EVSE system with EMS. A bonus with this permit is that it allows you to do any other electrical work through the year without issuing an electrical permit. The budget does not also include BC Hydro charges, such as a new meter, and also the cost of internet would be an expense in the Strata's annual budget if, of course, an internet connection is utilized, such as a lot of areas on the island that do not have good cellular service to connect to an outside EVSE vendor, and you would require an internet service possibly within your building.
Thank you, Lee. So in a strata setting, some of the best practices that you're going to want to consider are regular communication and education with your owners throughout the process. As Lee said, it's important to consult a lawyer. I suggest consulting a lawyer very early in the planning process. It's not just about bylaws. You're going to want to completely understand the parking designations in your strata plan and your bylaws. You may also have existing rules. You're going to want to consider user agreements. And all of these things should be planned early, because these things are going to inform your decisions about what type of system is your preferred solution. As Lee said, you can include estimated legal costs. So because your contractor who's doing the EV Ready plan, they're not required to go get estimates from other third parties. So it would be a good idea for the strata to contact a lawyer and try to estimate what budget you're going to need for legal costs so that you can tell your EV plan author to put that amount in the budget. So now we'll talk about the specifics of the rebate program. The CleanBC Go Electric EV Charger Rebate Program offers a rebate of up to 75% of the cost of creating an EV Ready plan, up to a maximum of $3,000. Also suggests that you check with your municipality or district for possible top-up rebates. For example, the District of Saanich has just announced a new top-up rebate program that provides an additional $1,000 towards the cost of your plan. What's very important, as Lee said, is to make sure the EV Ready plan meets all of the requirements. So here are some more details about eligibility. Your building must be located in BC. It has to be constructed no later than August 31st, 2020. This is because the rebate is intended for retrofit solutions only. Newer buildings aren't eligible. You probably have noticed in recent years that some municipalities have adopted bylaws that require new buildings to make 100% of their parking spaces EV ready. So any building that's been constructed since those bylaws were put in place would not be eligible. It also has to be a multi-unit residential building, such as a condo building. To be eligible, the stratas must be planning level 2 charging. Like Lee said, you might end up doing a project where you only plan for level 1 charging, but to be eligible for the rebate for this plan, you must be planning level 2. So your plan is going to present a solution that will support level 2 charging stations in the parking spaces. Also, there has to be a relationship with the strata's common property. For example, the system will use common electricity. That's the electricity you pay for through your strata fees. And/or the system will require changes to common property. So an example of a change to common property would be things like adding or changing electrical panels in the common property electrical room, adding conduit or wiring through a parking area. In most condo buildings, both of these conditions will be met, but you'll see that these requirements are and/or, so it's okay if your situation only satisfies one of these conditions. Most duplex, triplex, townhouse, and bare land strata corporations aren't eligible for a rebate for an EV-ready plan. This is because duplex, townhouse, bare land strata units are included in a program for single-family homes. These types of strata units fit into the single-family home program if they have a private garage or dedicated parking. Dedicated parking could be something like a carport or a driveway that is only used for that unit. The program supports the purchase and installation of new level 2 charging stations. VISOA will be presenting a separate webinar for townhouse stratas. There are best practices that strata corporations should follow and electrical considerations that they should be aware of before any owners use a level 1 or level 2 charging station in their townhouse. So how do you apply for the EV Ready Plan rebate? Pre-approval from BC Hydro or FortisBC is not required for the EV Ready Plan rebate. So that means you get your plan done first, and then you apply for the rebate. However, we're still governed by the Strata Property Act. So that means that the strata needs approval from the owners. The cost of your EV Ready plan is not an operating expense. It requires a 3/4 vote at an annual general meeting or special general meeting to approve the funding from a CRF expense or by special levy. Make sure your plan meets all of the requirements. When your plan is completed, Council submits an application online with a copy of the EV Ready plan and the invoices from the electrical contractor and/or engineer. So when you go to Go Electric BC's site, you'll see that there's a place to enter if you're a BC Hydro customer or a FortisBC customer. If you follow the BC Hydro site, you'll come to a screen like this, and you can begin your application. When you come to this screen, it's going to ask you which rebate you're applying for. You'll see that there's 3 boxes to check, and in this case, we're applying for the EV Ready plan. It's going to remind you what documents you need, and you can start the application. But who has authority to apply? Why must the Strata Council be the applicant? Section 3 of the Strata Property Act says the Strata Corporation is responsible for managing and maintaining the common property and common assets of the Strata Corporation for the benefit of all the owners. Then Section 4 says that the powers and duties of the Strata Corporation must be exercised by the council. The rebate program says that this program is open to building representatives such as strata councils who have oversight of an eligible multi-unit residential building in BC. So after your owners have had their annual general meeting or special general meeting and approved the resolution, the council now has the authority to submit the application. There are other rebates available. So once your EV Ready plan is finished, you'll want to look into the program for the electrical infrastructure rebates. This will be to implement what your EV Ready plan has shown as your preferred solution. There are also rebates for the charging stations themselves. Those are called the multi-unit residential building charger rebates. And under this program, the stations must be networked for at least 2 years. Now, these rebates require pre-approval. So after you've received your rebate for your EV Ready plan, you can apply using that same process to apply for pre-approval for these 2 programs. You're going to want to check the program guide for details. Sometimes there are small things in the program that might change, so always stay current by checking the program guide. We are going to have separate webinars that focus on each of these rebates so that we can go through all of the steps for you. There's also an excellent program called the EV Charging Advisor. Here, if you are a strata council, a property manager, or a building owner, such as the owner of an apartment building, you can get up to 5 hours of support from an advisor. The advisor could give you consultation and education about your EV Ready plan or about stations. They can also give you some assistance determining the specifications of equipment. They can provide educational events for your residents. They could do a presentation or a webinar at an annual general meeting or special general meeting or even a council meeting. They might also help you apply for your rebates and give you some access throughout the project. Now, keep in mind, this is only 5 hours and it may not include a site visit. You also have your contractor who's doing your plan. So you can ask your contractor or engineer many of the technical questions. And if they have visited your building, they may be able to provide information that is more specific. Again, if you go to this site, not only can you apply for rebates, but you can get a lot of information and the program guide. Now that you know all about EV Ready plans for condominium stratas, I hope that you will register for the next webinar in the series called EV Electrical Infrastructure Rebates for Condominium Stratas. You'll receive an email from Zoom tomorrow with several useful links, including a link to register for that webinar. You can also visit VISOA's website. We have a page called Electric Vehicle Charging for Stratas. Here you can find information about all of the webinars in this series, as well as links to the rebate program guide, top-ups from municipalities, a BC Hydro form to request the load data that Lee was talking about for your strata, and more information. I'd like to thank Lee MacFarlane, the Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation, and to all of you for joining us today.